Can you see the screen, Sabnil?
Yes, I can. Yes, sure.
Okay. Can you listen to the? Oh wait, let me share the screen again, so that at least I the sharing of the screen.
Sure.
Can you see?
Yes, I can see the. Yeah, I can see the screen.
Us on digitalization
Can you hear?
for successful
Yes, I can
business
hear.
operations. What you need.
Perfect.
As the good book says, without good advice, everything goes wrong. It takes careful planning for things to go right. So every business wants to achieve success, but few are ready or know how to take the plunge in this new normal, particularly with the COVID-19 situation and what we're experiencing. So in this age of digitalization, what must companies do to adapt? How does one deploy good techniques with a dose of, I use the word, uncommon sense to achieve business success? What are the skill sets that are needed to help your employees and yourself to take on this journey? So what does success look like? So in this class, I'm going to share with you the what, why, and how of effective digitalization for companies. Whether you're small, medium, or large enterprises, I hope that this practical down-to-earth session will help you kickstart the digitalization journey with less pain and angst. Hi, my name is Patrick Thng. I'm from the School of Computing and Information Systems at the Singapore Management University. I'm a director of the highly ranked Master of IT in Business postgraduate program, where I direct the FinTech and Analytics track. The MITB program has been ranked as top in Asia for 2 years, and our graduates are highly demanded in the industry, with many securing several job offers. I'm both an industry practitioner and practice educator, having worked as a managing director in several large organizations such as the World Bank in Washington, DC, where I spent several years in the US, and with global banks such as DBS and UBS, and international consulting firms such as Ernst & Young and Touche in Australia. So besides my passion in developing the next generation of leaders, I contribute in the industry as partner of Wesley Clover, a venture building investor, where we build new companies and I'm currently co-founder of several startups, as well as I sit on several boards and coach technology and consulting firms on selling effectively. Right. Without further ado, let's get into the masterclass. Given that we have a total of 45 minutes for this class, I can only share a subset of the digital tools and skills that you need to acquire. If you need further training and advice or consultancy, feel free to contact me at the Singapore Management University, where I'll be happy to assist you and your company. This masterclass is structured into 3 segments. The first segment I call Chapter 1. I will go through what the skills you need. I will give you an idea of digitization and digitalization, and a very common term that you often hear, digital transformation. What's it all about? And then I will provide an overview of some of the key digital trends and the kind of tools and skills that will help you outcompete your competitors. At the end of this segment of Chapter 1, I will share with you the key skill sets that are based on inputs from leading industry players on what skills they're looking for. These are the skills that you have to prepare yourself and your employees to compete effectively in this new normal of COVID-19. And after I finish the Chapter 1, I will go into the next segment where I will talk about and share with you how to begin your digitalization journey by helping you to apply 2 sets of modeling tools, the business model canvas, as well as the business process and re-engineering. With these 2 sets, I hope that I could help you to launch new innovative products and services and make your business operations more customer-friendly and efficient. And finally, in the final segment of this video, I will be covering it on 3 practical execution tools or techniques. They are design thinking, agile development, and the third tool, prototyping. These 3 tools are often applied by businesses to help identify specific innovations that their customers need and build rapid solutions that can go to market fast. And of course, there are other tools as well, which we do not have enough time to cover. But I'm happy to follow up with you after the masterclass. Okay, let's hop into chapter 1, the very first segment. What are the skills do you need to actually get into this journey? First, companies often talk about digital transformation and automation, but what do they mean? And how can going digital help your business operations? Well, there are two important terms and differences when we approach going digital. So let me first talk about the first two, digitization versus digitalization. Now, many companies try to make their operations more efficient by automating. This I term as digitization. They may upgrade their existing IT system, improve their IT hardware. However, while this initiative of digitization are important, they are not going to give you the significant lift that you need to outperform your competitors. But the second concept, I think, is a more important one that I would like you to pay special attention. And it's commonly referred to as digital transformation. And the term I'm going to use in this segment that you hear very often is called digitalization. So what is digitalization or digital transformation? It requires three essential elements for you to achieve competitive advantage. They are first, having a mindset, or sometimes we use the term culture, of looking out for what customers need and day-to-day habits of encouraging your employees to look for the interests of your customers. We call it a culture of customer centricity. The second important element for digitalization is to constantly look at ways to improve your core business operations. What processes are broken? Which ones need to be thrown away? Which ones hinder the business? And which are the ones we need to improve on? And thirdly, what are some new ways of doing business that are different from our existing business? Example, are there new changing patterns of customer engagement? Are there new digital tools that can help me generate more business? Should we change our pricing approach that helps both our customers and the company? We will look at some of these tools and techniques that can help us address these three essential elements in digitalization. Particularly, we will cover those specific tools in chapter 2 and 3 of this masterclass. So I'm going to now introduce to you some of the trends that are happening in the digital space. I call this slide digital trends and tools. Okay. On this slide here, I'd like to share with you some of these new trending technologies that are happening, and some of them are emerging and some of them are moving very fast. Okay. The first one is DevOps. DevOps is simply a technique where many of the companies like Google, Facebook, and the e-commerce companies have to continuously develop new features, functions, and then at the same time work with operations to quickly launch these new functionalities. So unlike the old method of taking a long time to do development and then doing a lot of testing before it's implemented, DevOps actually help companies to speed up changes and put all these changes almost immediately so that customers can experience these new changes. Analytics. I'm sure by now you've heard of this term business analytics or data analytics, or sometimes known as big data. Essentially, analytics is a set of tools and techniques to help you to obtain better customer insight, to understand how you can manage risk, and at times using analytics to also prevent frauds. Blockchain. By now you must have heard of cyber currencies, cryptocurrencies. So here, blockchain is used beyond cryptocurrencies. You know, we actually use blockchain in the area of smart contracts and also in the area of digital assets. Now, digital assets can come in many forms. And one of those forms that you'll be hearing very soon is called the central bank digital currency. So central banks around the world are exploring to issue the currency using the blockchain technology. Next, artificial intelligence. This is a technique where it's actually based a lot on statistical techniques, where the idea is to simulate human intelligence, and in the areas of high-speed computation, making recommendations, making predictions. However, this field is advancing so fast that we're now seeing another area of development in AI, and this is called explainable AI, where now this particular technology called XAI helps to explain what the underlying AI engine has recommended, and tells you why the particular AI engine has made certain recommendations. It's able to now explain to you what's going on in the black box. Now, in orange that I've highlighted, these are the four tools and techniques that I'll be spending more time in the next two sections to actually go into details. So quickly, agile development is a very speedy way of developing new applications functionalities. Agile processes is to make sure that we automate many of the workflows processes called RPA. And then design thinking is a technique of understanding and then getting involved with your customer, prototyping, and then launching some of these prototype products. And then business process engineering is actually a skill methodology and technique to help you look at your end-to-end business processes and do a radical change or transformation of this process. Now, open APIs enables organizations to exchange data so that you as a consumer, for instance, now can access not only your bank's data, but all the other banks that you deal with in a single platform. The minute the banks open, when they start opening up their APIs. Cloud technology is one way where many companies are using this technology to save money because they don't have to invest in very expensive data centers, and then using the third party like AWS or Microsoft Azure to actually put their technology operations or data center operations in the cloud. This will save you significant costs. IoTs, or what I call smart sensors. These are devices that you'll see that will help us to sense what's going on. It can sense visual, it can sense sound, it can sense smells as well. So sensors are coming in, especially with the uptake of implementation of 5G. The reason why today IoTs are not as widely used as we expect it to be is simply because the current 3G and 4G telecom network doesn't have enough speed and bandwidth. However, with the rollout of 5G all over the world, including Singapore, you can expect a very significant uptake in the application of IoTs, where some of these IoTs can even sense, for example, traffic car emission, and sensing those emissions can help smart city planners to be able to divert traffic because they can sense that there's a significant road traffic jam, and then there's a significant emissions as a result of that. So IoTs, you'll see, will play a very significant part in the coming years. And finally, cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a nightmare for many companies simply because the hackers are not have been quite relentless in the way they hack and attack many companies' data, websites. And so as a result, this one technology that will continuously to be reversed. And as the hackers develop new technologies, new techniques are also being evolved to actually stop or prevent these hacking incidents. Right. The next slide I want to share with you are some of the skill sets. The 7 skill sets that I mentioned that are essential for you and your company to actually position your company to develop or acquire these skills. So I call it the 7 essential digital competencies and skills. What are they? So the 7 are right at the top. The overarching is leadership. So there are some of these competencies that requires you to have the strategic and the execution capabilities to lead the organization. In the next slide later, I will go into some details of what are some of these specific skills that are needed under this competency called leadership. Now, in the next 6 pillars that you can see in this house that I've charted out, first, a key pillar is digital business, digital awareness. And this is also one very important competency that companies must develop, because if you're not digitally aware and understand how digital business operates, then you'll put yourself at a great disadvantage. Then the second pillar is on digital analytics and actionable insights. So as I said earlier, analytics can actually help companies to predict as well as prescribe what are the actions or the recommendations that they need to consider for their company operations or for their customers. But analytics by itself is useless unless you can actually use it to execute, or I use the term actionable insights. Thirdly, the third pillar is about customer experience and design. This is a very important pillar in the sense that unless companies are very close to their customers and know how the customer is experiencing your product, your services, your operations, you have no idea why customers leave your organization and buy from your competitors. So here, the competency of the customer journey or experience and how to design based on your understanding of customer experience will actually help you to have a significant edge over your competitors. So this is a very key competency in the new industrial revolution. The fourth pillar is agility and new ways of working. Today, we have evolved new methods, new approaches to actually implement digital systems, applications in a very fast manner. So this is what we call agile development. And there are new ways of working. For example, you hear the term digital marketing. So here in this fourth pillar, later I'll talk about some of the skills that are needed. And in fact, I'll be talking on one of the technique called agile development and how companies use agile development to quickly launch products and services. On the fifth pillar, it's about omni-communications. Today, we no longer rely on the press or on the print media. Today, communications come in many different forms, through Facebook, through Twitter, through WhatsApp, and also through your laptops as well as your mobile devices. And these communications are new technologies, and there are many different ways to deploy this type of communications. And how does one spend effectively so that you can deploy and utilize these channels cost effectively. And finally, risk. Every business are faced with risk. So in this case, I'm talking about management of risk. This could be risk of weak controls, cyber risk, and the other issues that companies constantly face is regulations. Today, we have regulations like the PDPA, GDPR, and for those in the financial services industry, the regulators like the MAS have also imposed a lot of rules and regulations, such as the technology risk management. And you have heard of the PDPA. So with this, the risks that companies face, as well as the many regulations, what type of the skills and competencies do companies need to possess so that they don't breach regulations and at the same time manage the risk well? So with this, I will stop at this slide here and move on to the next chapter 2, where I will talk to you and share with you on the 2 modeling tools. Hi, welcome back to the second segment on the Masterclass Digitalization for Successful Business Operations. So earlier in chapter 1, I gave you an overview of the key technology trends, as well as some of the tools that organizations are starting to use. And some of these technologies have moved quite fast, and some are currently being used extensively. And then in the previous section, I also share with you the type of digital skills, the 7 pillars that are needed to prepare you and your organization and your employees to get ready for this next section of our new normal of COVID-19. So in chapter 2 of this segment, the question you're going to ask is, okay, given that you shared with me the trends, the skills that are needed, now where and how do I begin the digitalization journey? So for this segment, I'm going to share with you two very important innovation modeling tools where it can get you started on this innovation and digitalization journey. So the two tools I'm going to share with you will be the business model canvas. And the second modeling tool I'm going to share with you is the business process re-engineering tool. For these two modeling tools, how can they help you? So maybe let briefly describe to you what the first tool is about, the business canvas modeling, or sorry, the business modeling canvas. First, this tool will actually help you to be able to launch innovative products and services, and even can also help you to look at your existing business activity as well by looking at your underlying business model. And you can ask questions such as, what is your company doing right now? Is it profitable? Can I do better? So it's a very systematic way to examine not only your current business, but also if you do decide to launch new innovative products and services, you can actually use this tool as well. The business model canvas is a very powerful tool. The second tool I'm going to share with you in this segment is what I call business process re-engineering. This particular tool will actually help you to examine your end-to-end or step-by-step workflow or processes from beginning to end. You can then find out whether your processes are efficient, whether they are customer friendly, can your process actually handle exceptions as well. So besides processes, what other factors impact your business operations? For example, the way you compensate your staff, your HR practices, how do you describe job titles? Are your customers misled when they deal with your staff that has an inappropriate title? You'll find that the power of business process re-engineering can actually help you to uncover as well as design more efficient and effective workflows as well. I'll give you an example of how it's done when I go into this particular model, as well as to share with you actually real life case in the industry where I happen to be closely involved with this particular project, and I share with you the benefits of and the outcomes of that project. Right, the first innovation modeling tool I'm going to share with you is the business model canvas. So this is a very effective tool and it's used by many organizations, so whether big or small, as well as many startups that are trying to actually get into the marketplace. The startups typically use this to launch new innovative products and services that we see. For example, in the FinTech Festival that we are currently experiencing, you'll see many of these new FinTech startups using this particular technique or tool. Now, can this tool be used to examine your existing business? Of course it can. So what is this BMC all about? So first, it is a technique to model how a business creates value and monetizes the value it has created. So no point creating value unless you know how to extract value and monetize it, right? So it's a very systematic structure. It involves a 9-step process, starting with the identification of a significant customer problem. And that is, you need to identify what is this significant customer problem that your customers are experiencing. And because it's significant, they're most likely to are prepared to pay you for your solution if you're able to solve this pain point for them. So these 9 steps are iterative, but it typically starts with either block 1 or block 2. And on the left side of this chart, you can see what do I mean by block 1 and block 2. Block 1 and block 2 talks about customer segments, value propositions. Now, the most difficult aspect of this particular model is the customer problem identification. Why? Simply because most of the inexperienced users of the BMC are not able to define the problem accurately. And as a result, what happened is they develop a very nice innovative solution, but does not really address the problem of the customers because they have not really identified accurately what the customer problem is. And I often say to the companies as well as the students that I work with using this model, no point developing the most advanced mousetrap when the problem is actually an elephant, because the elephant will just trample and destroy your mousetrap. Similarly, no point designing the best elephant pit stop to actually trap an elephant when the problem is actually a very smart mouse. Okay? So the BMC, as I said earlier, is used by many startups and innovative-oriented companies. So in the next slide, I'm going to go through with you the 9 building blocks of the BMC. Right. Okay. So if you look at this chart here, I'd like you to focus on the lower part of this chart, and that is the series of yellow boxes. As you can see, there are 9 boxes in the business model canvas. And as we go through from block 1 to block 2, block 3, block 4, I will explain to you how the business model canvas is used. Okay. So first, on block 1, in value proposition, it is very important we ask and identify the very first question, and that is, which of your customers' problems are you trying to solve? Okay. Is it an operation problem? Is it an engagement problem? Or is it something that they face not only with your company, but many other companies as well? Typically, for example, in the insurance industry, there's just too much paperwork. And as a result, the processes are very inefficient and very cumbersome. And many of these customers out there are inundated with so many different insurance products they don't understand. So this is an example of a problem that a customer out there is facing. Then which particular customer needs are you actually satisfying? And what are the key features eventually if you're able to come up with an innovation or product that actually can solve the customer's pain points? Right. So here, the first block is a very important block, and many companies somehow make this simple mistake, but can be very fatal. And that is, they fail to really identify the customer's problem, and they jump to block 7, which is to come up with the solution. So 95% of startups fail simply because they have not really identified the key problems, and then they go about solving, coming up with a solution that solves the wrong problem. Now, the second block is customer segment. Simply, you need to address this question. Who are your most important customers? The customer problem that you identified in block 1, are these really your most important customers? And the answer is no. You may have to go back to block 1 again to look at, for the most important customers, what are the kind of problems that they're experiencing? No point solving problems for a minute portion or segment of customers that form a very small base of your business interests or the customers that exist in the industry. So identify which are the most important customers for you, okay? And then what is it do these customer segments want you so that they can get their job done, okay? So this is block number 2. Now, typically between block 1 and 2, you keep on, bouncing up from 1 and 2 to truly understand who are really these customers and what is the exact problem that you're facing. Now, very often I encourage companies to ensure that they have data points, evidence to support the kind of problems that they feel that they have identified. Now, in block 3, it talks about the channels. Which of the channels do your customers want to be reached? Do they want to have face-to-face interactions, or do they prefer to have digital interactions? Or actually, do they need to have a hybrid depending on the kind of products and services? So you have to identify which channels that your customer would like to engage you with. Next, customer relationships. Now, assuming that you have developed this very nice innovative platform to solve the problem that you've identified in block 1. Next question is customer relationships. How do you acquire these customers? How do you keep or retain them? And more importantly, how do you grow this group of customers that you've acquired? So that's block number 4. Block number 5 talks about revenue. So if you're going to have this customer segment and you have solved their problem, then how do you make money from this group of customers? What's the revenue model? What's the pricing tactics that you need to consider in order to be ahead of your competition, and that the customers will find that your revenue pricing is reasonable? You remember in the good old days, we used to buy CDs, DVDs. These days we don't. We pay a monthly subscription to companies like Netflix, and then we watch and consume as much videos or movies as we can. So the pricing model has changed, and yet it's become very profitable for companies like Netflix. So you need to consider, in the case of Netflix, they came up with very innovative platform to solve what problem? The problem was because no customers these days want to go and handle physical DVDs, and then having the hassle of returning and so on and so forth. So with the technology that's available, it allows streaming. So with streaming, you have to figure out how you're going to change your pricing model. So this is what Block 5 is all about. Block 6 talks about who are some of your key partners that you're going to work with. Now, as you know, in any business, we often have to work with key partners. Who are they? Who are these key suppliers that I really got to engage them so that I can push this innovative platform with this product out to my customers? Okay. Then at the same time, what are you going to give to your suppliers or key partners? And then what are you also in turn getting from them? How are you going to reward them? So it's a win-win situation. Block 7 is where I say the key activities are. What kind of platform can you build or should you build? Okay. What are the important activities that are critical to make sure that this particular platform actually works? Okay. So how do you develop this application? Where can you get this application developed? What does the prototype of the application look like? So these are important key activities that you need to identify in this block. In Block 8, we looked at what are some of the resources that you need. Financial resources, marketing resources, HR resources, the people that you need, the business development people that you need, and so on and so forth. So key resources are also a very important area you need to identify before you figure out how you're going to launch your new initiative. And finally, 9, costs. Okay, so costs, I've purposely left it to the end because we need to then figure out that after you've worked out all the 8 blocks, now you need to figure out what's your fixed cost, what's your variable cost. Obviously, we want to have low fixed costs and high or variable costs that you can control, so that when volumes goes up, cost goes up marginally, rather than have a fixed base cost where you take a long time to recover those costs, or what I call capex, right? So with that, look at your cost structure. And as I said earlier, a cloud technology enable you to actually have very low capex and then able to operate on more variable costing. So this is actually how you use the PMC. And typically, it takes several weeks or even months talking to customers, potential suppliers, to be able to actually then figure out how this new business model is actually going to work. Right. So this is the part on, this is how the business model canvas can be used. I'm now going to the next section to talk about business process re-engineering. This is a second modeling tool that will actually help you to model the end-to-end process. So what is BPR? Okay, now BPR is different from business process improvements. Okay, business process improvements, we typically improve incrementally. Okay, and we don't get significant benefit or jump in the way we acquire those benefits. So BPR is basically a radical redesign, a very transformative way to redesign your core business process so as to achieve significant improvement in productivity, cycle times, and quality. Okay. Now, companies typically start with a blank sheet of paper and they rethink what are the existing processes to deliver more value to the customer. They typically adopt a new value system and place a lot of great emphasis to meet customers' needs as well as address their pain points. Now, I hope that you can see a pattern that I've the few keywords that I've been using. Customer needs, customer centricity, customer pain points. The new way of doing business and deploying all these tools that I'm sharing with you, the focus is actually on the customers, right? Then the third important element of BPR is companies attempt to reduce organizational layers, cut down the number of silos, eliminate unproductive activities. So they will redesign their siloed organizations into what we call cross-functional teams, okay? And then secondly, they use technology in a very smart manner to improve the way we share or we use data and to make decisions. So basically, BPR is a very powerful methodology or tool that you can use, okay, to achieve dramatic improvements in productivity, in customer satisfaction. So I'm sharing you with a chart, an example of how one can do a customer journey mapping, which is one of those very specific techniques. And in fact, there are software tools out there. This particular example shows you how a customer called Jane goes about buying a healthcare insurance product. And here, this chart tells you it attempts to go through the process that the customer actually experienced. And in blue, it shows the positive experience. In red, it shows all the negative or pain points that the customer is experiencing. So when we do end-to-end process mapping, okay, we use an example of a technique like this or a tool where we can then identify. Obviously, for those pain points, you want to figure out how to address those pain points. Perhaps your process is clumsy. Perhaps your people are not well trained. Perhaps you're not using enough technology to actually address those pain points, right? Recently, I was at a particular warehouse trying to use their services, but this particular warehouse insists that I need to go to the office and sign up some paperwork. Then I questioned them. I said, you know, these days we use Zoom, you know, we use all types of electronic means. Why can't I actually deal with you via Zoom or over the telephone and I can do electronic signature? Well, their response to me was that, well, the company, you know, doesn't have this kind of process. Now, this is a very important feedback to, for example, companies like that. And by the way, this wasn't a small little warehouse that was dealing with. It's actually a big conglomerate, and yet, you know, they're still working in the 18th or 19th century, where it's still based on paper and insisting that customers must go through the process that they have instituted, which is very inflexible and customer friendly, right? Okay, now I'm going to give you a real life example of a particular project that was involved in process re-engineering. So this was one of those major Asian banks based in Singapore. And the business process they were thinking of re-engineering was in the lending space, commercial lending, lending to customers, lending to individuals, lending to SMEs. Okay. Their business is profitable, but however, it was highly inefficient. So when we did the end-to-end process mapping, we found out there were 220 processes from the day the customer signs up with the bank and the day when the customer leaves the bank. Okay, there were a lot of paperwork, paper trails, and bureaucracy. They compared themselves to a US competitor bank in one of the particular loan product. This particular US bank took only 2 hours to actually, you know, approve the loan, whereas this bank that I did some work with actually took about 5 days. So they realized, you know, they're way inefficient and ineffective, and they obviously cannot compete for speed as well as better revenue if customers are prepared to actually pay more if you can actually get the loan approved faster. Now, this particular re-engineering project took us 9 months, and I actually had a cross-functional team, some from technology and some from the, in fact, the majority were from the business units as well as operations. So we locked ourselves in this room and we were in this big project room for 9 months. And in this 9 months, we then came up with process changes. We looked at even at the way the policies work, because as you know, some organizations have policies that work against profitable or effective business operations. So we actually started, with scratch on a blank piece of paper to say that if a customer wants to deal with us, okay, let's first maybe look at what is the best, most efficient, effective way to actually work with the customer. At the same time, there was another team that actually did the business process mapping of our current process, like what you saw earlier, to identify what were our existing customers' pain points. So with that, we figure out what was the current process, and then we figure out what will be the future processes that we really need to significantly introduce. What were the results? During these 9 months, these were the following benefits. Number one, the 220 processes were actually reduced to less than 100 processes. The 20-page application form that I had sympathy for customers that did to fill in has been reduced now to only 2 pages. Okay? The loan officer, instead of spending a lot of time in the office doing unproductive work, this time through changes in the process as well as putting in some automation, we were able to uplift the productivity by 50%. Okay? And then we even had to throw away 50,000 of paper-based forms because they were printed. And with this new way of doing things, we don't really need this 50,000 pieces of papers anymore, right? The bank was able to charge more fees for speedy loan approval from 1 day to 4 hours. And then we even changed the titles of our staff as well, because when customers deal with the staff in the old way of doing things, we have terms like customer operations officer, and the customer got no clue who this person, what is the role of this person, what's the job scope. So we actually changed terms, like for example, a customer loan administration officer or a customer credit officer, so that when customers actually deal with them, they understand what's the appropriate titles. Terms like vice president, assistant vice president doesn't mean anything to customers. So we changed the way we titled their job description, and even policies to encourage and to make the process work better. For example, we even changed the fixed transport allowance to a semi-variable transport allowance. So this then would encourage our credit officers to actually go beyond the central business district zone to actually visit customers. Because in the past, when you have a fixed transport allowance, you want to conserve the allowance, and you hardly want to do much traveling. Yeah. So as a result, we also make some of those changes so that at the end of the day, it encourages and actually make the process much more efficient and effective. So in summary, business process re-engineering is not just about workflows. It's also to look at some policy changes, compensation changes, title changes. It's a very massive exercise. And once you're able to do it, as you can see in this case, you achieve a lot of the benefits. Now, so I will end this segment to share with you that the two modeling tools, Business Model Canvas and BPR, or Business Process Reengineering, are very, very essential tools and methods that you could use to actually kickstart your innovation, or even examine your existing business process or your existing business. So with that, I end this segment, and I will move on to the third segment or third chapter, which will be looking at 3 specific techniques that you can apply in combination with these 2 modeling tools. Hi, welcome back to the third and final installment on digitalization for successful business operations. In this third and final installment, I'm going to share with you what are some of the very specific down-to-earth practical techniques that you can apply. So earlier in chapter 2, the previous segment, I talked about modeling tools, the business model canvas, as well as the business process re-engineering method or tool. Now I'm actually going to do a deep dive into some specific techniques you can actually apply now to develop very specific type of products or innovations that you are thinking of after you have applied the business model canvas as well as the BPR method. So in chapter 3 here, I'm going to cover on three execution tools. The first one is on design thinking, and the second is prototyping, and thirdly, agile development technique. Now, these three, although I've covered them separately, you'll find that as I share with you in this third segment, they're actually used within each of this technique and method as well. And later when I share with you, you can see why these three techniques, there are overlaps, okay? Then at the end of this chapter 3 or final installment, I guess your next important question is, what's next? Where can I get further help? Often it's very frustrating after listening to a talk and then not knowing, where do I go for further help? So towards the end of this segment, I'll make some suggestions of where you can get further help as you plan to go on, embark on this journey for your business. Okay, the first execution tool is called design thinking. So what is design thinking? Okay, now the picture of the gentleman below, okay, is a CEO of this company that is a very well-known design thinking company that has actually put this one of the leader in the industry. So the CEO says that the design thinking, what can it be described as? It is a discipline, it's a method, it's a methodology, it's a technique, okay? And what does this technique involve? So if you see the box on the right, okay, first, there are three key elements to this technique. First, observing people. The second part of this technique involves assessing the feasibility of technology, whether the technology is mature enough and you can apply it. And finally, whether it is viable. Is this commercially viable if you're going to launch this particular product or innovation? So in design thinking, it's very important in the first element called people first, to observe, to interpret what, for example, are your customers' needs. What are their pain points? What's the cost? What's the effect? Okay, and then validate it by either talking to your customers or prospective customers, or even talking to your people within your organization to sense about the key issues. So the first part of design method, as you can see, is very people-centric or customer-centric. The second part is the technology available? No point trying to bring a technology that's so untested. The technology is not stable enough, nor is it commercially viable enough. So look at whether this technology is available, and if it's available, we can actually use it to experiment it when we build the prototype. Right. And finally, can I commercialize? Can I continue to work on this innovation such that my customers or prospective customers will definitely buy from me, because I have actually solved the several of their pain points. So if you're able to do that, then you obviously have runaway commercial success. So the design thinking method is actually to help you by making sure that these three key elements are there. Right. Okay, what's the difference between design thinking and the traditional way that we think about, doing business or coming up with products and services? Okay, as you can see in this chart, the traditional business thinking puts the end user as an important factor or customer, but it's not at the center. Whereas in design thinking, we actually zoom in to the prospective customer or our existing customer. So they are the center of everything that we do, okay? The objective in design thinking is truly understand what's their underlying needs, what's their behavior, what's the rationale, why they behave like that, why did they buy more or buy less from you, or why are they buying from your competitors, okay? And then the environment is also different in design thinking, because then we get the entire organization to be creative, to go beyond the traditional way of treating customers, and making sure that you develop this innovation DNA in your organization. Okay, so you encourage your staff to build prototypes, to make experiments, and then do not fault them if those errors are not major. They allow them to have the experimental freedom in some areas so that they actually are empowered to actually figure out how to be more innovative and creative, right? Okay. So the work environment also has to be changed so that people are allowed to generate their creative juice, and then at the same time collaborate with one another. Obviously, the compensation system will also change as well, right? Then the teams typically are made up of people with different skill sets, right? So basically, design thinking has those key elements, right? So what's the process of design thinking? So here I've taken a slide from the Stanford Design School on design thinking. So the first step in blue is to empathize. Put yourself in the shoes of the customer or prospective customer through interviewing, through shadowing, through external surveys. You get a lot of surveys done by independent companies to understand what are the kind of issues, problems that the customer is experiencing, or even apply earlier the customer journey mapping. So this is the part, put yourself in the shoes of the customer. Next, define, okay? What are some of the stakeholders involved? Besides the customers, who else are involved? What about my operations people? What about my marketing folks? Okay, what about my finance department? Okay, what are some of the challenges that these stakeholders are experiencing? What are their pain points? Okay, so this is the second green box to define. Thirdly, this is the creative aspect. This is where we share ideas. Okay, customers sometimes can give you very good ideas because they may have seen better ways that are done by your competitors, or they may even have better ideas that they can suggest to you. So customers often is a very good source of ideas, and within your staff as well, they may be able to share good ideas that you can actually use, and then don't discourage them. So ideation, give them free hand to generate ideas, right? Next, after the ideas have been generated, obviously you cannot try all ideas. Pick the ones that you think will really meet and solve the main problems of your customer, and then develop what we call a prototype. A prototype is a mock-up. It could be a simple paper sketch. It could be even simple Excel screen type, just to keep it simple, or even just a piece of on a whiteboard, and you can actually do some simple kind of design, screen design, report design, whatever process design. Keep it simple, and the whole idea of this prototype is that we can actually try it out, and then if it fails, let's quickly fail, never mind, move on and try the next iteration. So this is what we mean by prototyping or piloting, right? And finally, after you build a prototype, test it. Does it really work? Check with your prospective customer. Check with your customer. Does the process work? Does this application actually work? Does this way of working actually works? And if the answer is yes, the test shows that you have actually developed a very nice prototype. So now you need to convert the prototype to a production, robust industrial strength application or platform, so that it can withstand, all the security, hacking, and incidents that may actually happen. So with that, hopefully you have an idea of the steps involved in design thinking. So the whole idea is get a small group, work in this group where you have some potentially prospective customer or customers in the group, and many different skill sets, multifunctional team. Okay, and from there you go through this 5 steps involved in design thinking. Next, the next execution tool is called prototyping, which I mentioned earlier. So you may be wondering, what in the world is prototyping? Well, it's actually an experimental way where design teams, they try out, execute ideas, and they convert a paper form design to a design that is actually on a digital platform. So there are actually tools out there, and some obviously, just get a piece of paper or whiteboard and then sketch out the what does the screen looks like on a mobile phone or on a tablet or even on your company's desktops, right? And then after you've done this sketching of those ideas, then how then you convert these ideas to digital form? So here below, I actually share with you some of these prototyping tools. So some of these tools are actually free. You don't have to pay a single cent, but obviously their features may be a little bit restricted. By having, if you have not much experience in prototyping, then obviously you can experiment with some of these free tools there. So I share with you 2 free tools that I see used in companies as well as amongst our students at SMU. Okay, for example, the wireframe technology actually helps you to simulate movements of the mouse, movements of data in various fields in a computer screen. Okay, and another free tool that we often use is Monaca. Actually, you can use this tool to convert your paper-based sketch to the application on a mobile phone. And you can actually see it come to life as you see your prototype coming to life on either your tablet or on your mobile phone. So this is what we call a simple example of prototyping, the second execution tool. The third execution tool I'm going to share with you is agile development. Now, what is agile development? Basically, unlike the old way of developing applications or digital systems, where it takes 6, 9, 12 months, in agile development, the technique is different. We do what we call sprints cycles. So typically we form a team, and the team could be 4 to maybe 8 persons. And this team typically comprised of the product experts, those who knows about products, features, folks from IT, and those with business or operation skills. They get together. And what they do is within a 2 to 4 week cycle, which we call a sprint. Sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3. So in, for example, sprint 1, it's usually 2 to 4 week cycle. And every sprint, you do a series of this sprint over a period of, it depends on the complexity, between 3 to 9 months. So in each of these 2 to 4 week sprint, these are the activities that you can see in the chart on the left. Okay, you do planning, you do requirements, you do analysis, design, you test, you evaluate, you prototype. Okay, so this is called sprint 1. The whole idea is that at every sprint, you have to produce 1 or 2 deliverables. Okay, and these deliverables will actually eventually become your final prototype. Okay, and that final prototype is, I would say, 60 to 70% usable, and we use the term minimum viable product or MVP. Okay, so the whole idea is you work through this series of sprints to actually work towards the end point of developing a minimum viable product or MVP. And typically an MVP is 60 to 70% completed in terms of functionalities, and a customer or prospective customer can actually use it without any of these bells and whistles. Okay, so this is what we mean by the agile development. It's fast, it's effective, it's very productive, right? So and obviously at each of this sprint, you want to get your customer feedback, because it's very important to see whether it really has solved your customer's pain point with each of this, and not introduce more pain points for your customer. So at the end of this series of sprints, you will then actually develop or produce what we call the minimum viable product, which is your more sophisticated initial prototype that you just built. So basically, that's what agile development is all about. And finally, putting this all together. So in segment 2 or chapter 2, I talk about the business model and business process. So with this 2 as the overarching approach, then I mentioned about the 3 techniques, which is design thinking, prototyping, and agile development. So when you combine these 3 techniques, you actually can come up with a rapid solution, which we call the MVP. So the whole idea now is that your business canvas model, you address those points. Your rapid solution is actually the solution that you identify in block 7, the key activities, resources that you must build. Okay, and finally, the process re-engineering then will look at the end-to-end workflow to ensure that this new workflow makes sense with this new solution or way of doing it. So with that, we've completed the 2 segments on using some of these tools and techniques to be able to kickstart your digitalization process. Now, so we have covered chapter 1, giving you an overview of some of these key tools and trends. What are some of the skill sets you need to equip your people in your organization? I went through the 2 modeling tools and the 3 practical execution tools. Okay, so this is the formal part where I complete the masterclass, and I guess the next important checkpoint for you is the important question: what's next? Where can I get more help? Let me give you some ideas or suggestions. Okay, right. For some of you who may have not actually worked with universities, let me share with you, having been in the university environment, as well as having been a chief information officer and a managing director out there in industry, I realized that the university can offer a lot of resources to help you and your people. So on the left here, I say is that, you can have interns working on short-term assignments for 6 months attached to you, or you can actually have a project that you want, for example, using the Sprint Agile Development Technique, using final year students who are actually working on their final year IT projects. Okay, you can even hire our SMU graduates from the School of Computing Information Systems, or you can even send your staff or yourself to actually go for some of these professional degree courses. For example, on the right, you can actually scan on your QR code. The Master of IT actually helps you to develop those skill sets that are needed to actually help you or your company on that journey. We also do customized short-term training tailored for your company. Or if you want, you may want to do a longer-term multi-year staff development programs or joint research that we actually work with companies out there. And finally, if you need consulting assistance, we have experts in our faculty who are both practitioners as well as expert researchers with the latest state-of-the-art technology. So these are many, many ways you can actually work with universities or the industry should you decide to actually work with consulting firms out there. So with that, I want to thank you for participating in this masterclass, and I wish you well, and I hope that you'll be very successful, and feel free to touch base with us if you need further assistance. Thank you very much.
Hello, is the speaker here? Or if not, that would be the end of the sessions. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining.